Hiro Matsudo, a name synonymous with training people's legs to break. And how was he as a trainer after the legs healed? And what was sort of if you were going to be accepted into training for Florida, how would it generally go?
Well, they put the guys, through the motions. They had them all. They had Jack, they had Matsuda, and Mike Gray, all the guys, wrestlers. Brian Blair at the time. Matsuda had he was making wrestling gear, wrestling tights, shirts, stuff for the wrestling teams and stuff. And he had 4 or 5 Korean ladies who worked in the little warehouse that he had, and they were sewing. But he had a little gym on the side. Had the big mat on the floor, and then on the other side he had the some weights, some dumbbells, and a bench and some others, where you would go and work out sometimes. I don't know if that was the time where he broke Hulk's Hogan. I was working there with Brian Blair. He and I were working out. I don't know if it's the same day that he broke Hulk's ankle, or Hulk was asking him about the ankle. He says, "How you broke my ankle?" He says, "Well, how did I show you?" He said, and I remember Hiro telling Hulk, "I don't show you. I give you. I take. It's just you have to learn what I've learned. As it went down." So he was, he was a salty old guy from old school in Japan.
Is it fair to say he had a bit of a mean streak in him, or was that just the way he was brought up to bring wrestling?
Yeah, it was just, samurai.
Yeah,
that was his Fuji. They all got, all those guys got, they always got that killer instinct in them.
Was this sort of like an edict from Eddie Graham, because he was like the same as Bill Watts and the same as a couple of other people who only wanted tough guys and the really dedicated guys? Would he be the one to say, anyone new comes in, just murder him?
So I don't know. You mean guys starting or guys in the business already?
Guy starting, guy chancing their arm at trying to be a wrestler. Like maybe fans before the matches who would take on Bob Roop, maybe.
Yeah, they probably went through a kind of a screening process and had somebody that, somebody that presented them to Eddie or somebody in the office to go on into the training and stuff. So they wanted to make sure that, whoever they're bringing into the business, was going to be productive or be a good representative. But then again, he had Bobby Shane and some other guys doing, the gay men parts and stuff, like that. So, it wasn't, it's business is business. So, but you're breaking in your young guys is another story.
How much did Hiro Matsudo charge?
I don't know.
I
don't know. That was long before my time. That was, he was training guys. They had a whole hooey there. Harley was even in. They'd take them down to the Sportatorium in Tampa, and then they'd have them, because they had the ring in the back there, in back of where they do the interviews, and they did the weekly TV on Wednesdays, and they'd take them in back there, and they had Hiro, that mat at Heroes. So I said, I don't know if he broke. That's when Brian and I were working out. If that's when he broke Hulk's ankle, or was it sometime earlier than that Hulk had shown up. See what they did with Hulk. And one of the big mistake is you got a guy 6'6", 300 pounds, and doesn't know, and he's a musician, bass player, but he's an athlete. He's not a, he's not a punk or anything. He wants to get in wrestling. He thinks he'd be. So what they do, they take him and they beat him down. They did the same thing with my son. It wasn't there, but they beat him down. But eventually, if you're any type of an athlete, you got any kind of brain at all, you start to learn. You get the, what you grabbed last time, I'm not going to give you this time, and everything else. And pretty soon, you've created yourself a 6'6", 300-pound monster. A guy that can take, not that somebody's going to go out there and stretch Jack Briscoe or something like that, but he certainly can take somebody that is big and bad and good looking and everything else. And not only that, he can take care of himself too. So, they kind of made a mistake in that aspect, that if somebody's going to turn on him, it better be somebody good. That's why Allegedly, Harley brought the gun. It wasn't to Kansas City, and rather than that straight left he used to throw. So.
Were there any? I'll come back to Hulk Hogan in a second, but were there any other stars made through that brutal style of bringing people into the business?
Oh boy, all those guys that came in Florida. I don't know who was. Well, Dick Slater. When we talked about Slater earlier, Slater was one. Mike Graham, Steve Kern. Basically anybody who was down there. They had a guy, Jim Shields, an Oklahoma wrestler that came there. He was doing a lot of training. Remember, he'd do a thing where he wouldn't even use his hands, and just with his legs, he wouldn't let the guy off his mat. And different guys, they'd have a lot of amateur wrestlers and stuff coming through. I can't remember offhand if you named some guys that I know Brian Blair got trained there, came up that way, but he was an amateur wrestler and a college football player, University of Louisville. So it wasn't like he was, and he spent he grew up in Tampa, so I don't know if he'd been accustomed to there, been around those guys all the time, but and some Orndorff. Paul Orndorff is another one, came up that way. And another guy, be careful what you teach him. Doesn't make, turn around and end up biting you in the ass in the end, So what, he went back, Matsuda, and returned the favor. So, things like, guys like that, that's, Orndorff was one, so, yeah.
Back to Hulk Hogan, and I know it's easy to say now that you saw championship in him, but at the time, I've seen the training footage that they filmed an actual film as well, so it's preserved very well. Very tall, already balding, sort of lanky at the time. And you were on the road with him for maybe the first couple of months he was in the business before he was sent elsewhere. Did you see championship in him? And how's his attitude, I suppose?
Well, I was living in an apartment in North Tampa. I had up there, was near Humperdinck and Stan Lane, Hollywood Blondes. It was up there, and he had a girlfriend. His girlfriend's sister was living, and then we had the big pool area, Florida, the pool area and stuff. So he was around there with Brutus, Beefcake, Eddie Leslie, and he was up in. That's when he was first starting up in Pensacola for the Fullers up there, and he got his first before he'd gone to India. And he was a big guy then. He looked. Dusty didn't want him around, so he went some spot show out around Gainesville, around there when it was Okeechobee or some small high school town. You look at him in the ring, my God, if he turns any kind of work and. And Vince crafted it to fit his style, but yeah, Jesus, 6'6", blonde hair, built like that. He was, his box office.
Yeah. Do you remember? He was the Super Destroyer, probably Super Destroyer number 75894, because everyone seemed to have that gimmick at one point or another. But he was the Super Destroyer for about a month or two, and then he disappeared. Do you remember anything about the Super Destroyer?
Scott Irwin? Is that Scott Irwin?
No. Hulk Hogan was Super Destroyer. That's what I was saying. Everyone seems to be Super Destroyer.
Oh no, I don't remember Super Destroyer. No, I remember I was Scott Irwin when he was Super D. He was a hell of a guy.